Well, if you thought Darkseid was powerful, it turns out that wasn't even his final form. Today, we're going to talk about why Darkseid's power is unlimited in the absolute universe. We'll also find out why that whole Superman energy thing isn't as dumb as we thought, or at least I thought. But first, we got to do a little bit of an overview into the first issue of the DC All-In Special. So if you didn't read it and you care, you might want to add this video to your watch later list, because there's going to be some spoilers. The first thing to note here is, unlike the absolute universe, all this stuff is canon. This is really happening. If you were to go over to Superman's house, he'd look just like he looks in this comic. Actually, I guess he wouldn't be there, because he's on some weird space station they've created for this new Justice League. Speaking of new Justice League, that's what the first half of this comic book is about. They've split it into two sections, Alpha and Omega. The Alpha chapter is super boring. It's an exposition dump. They're setting up these stupid little membership cards. It looks like the kind of thing somebody would have put in a movie in the 90s. So they guys have toy versions of it. Art's good. It's not interesting, but it's good. And the whole story is just happening in the background of the last section. The action-packed Omega half of the comic is, first of all, Wes Craig kills it. He's got some retro style art that he's doing that, first of all, really kind of takes you back to the beginning of those earlier comics. You feel like the amount of time between the beginning of Darkseid and then today and all the different ups and downs he's had. And it shows Darkseid being totally ruthless. Kills his son, dumps him into some kind of machine to bind his axe hand on his arm. First he cuts his hand off, and then the thing that he's pouring his blood into is like, need more blood, which I guess maybe is supposed to be setting up some symbolism that he's like sacrificing his family for his pursuit of power, I guess. Otherwise, it's kind of weird. It's like, well, you know, he didn't even try to put in more blood. He cuts his hand off, dumps some blood in there, and then his son comes up and is trying to be really nice to him and says, look, we made you this great army of hellish monsters, which is, I guess, the Darkseid equivalent of drawing a picture of your dad with crayons for the refrigerator. Then he blows up heaven, blows up hell with boom tubes, goes to the dark side of the moon, blows up Eclipso. He bonds with Spectre. And they don't make this really clear, and maybe you can explain this to me, but he wants to bond with Spectre so that he can get information on why he feels this energy all of a sudden, this like restlessness. He goes to hell. He doesn't ask them. He just says he wants Spectre. He goes to heaven, says he wants Spectre. So finally, he bonds with the Spectre because he created some miracle box. It seems a little lazy, the writing, because there's a lot of, it's almost like Deus Ex Machina stuff, but we accept that, I guess, because it's helping the bad guy instead of the good guy, which is definitely less cheap. It's cheap when you get a hero out of a tough spot with something that just comes out of the blue, but at the same time, it seems a little lazy. Like he makes this miracle machine that just somehow magically makes it so he can bond with Darkseid. There's a panel where the quintessence is like super calm, laid back. Any one of us could kill you. But your whole reason for coming here was totally pointless because you can't make the Spectre bond with you anyway. Then there's a panel where Darkseid says, oh, but I made this miracle box or whatever it's called. And then the very next panel, they're like, oh my God. It's just kind of funny. They're like super confident. And then in the next panel, like, oh my God. Y'all didn't realize that apparently there's some way to make a miracle machine. That didn't occur to you. You were that confident. And then he just says, I got a miracle thing. And they're like immediately screaming. They don't even stop to be like, that can't be real. Yeah, you know, the more I think about it, the writing's, at least on a micro level, like scene to scene, just not great. Panel to panel, there's a lot that doesn't quite make sense. Whatever. Darkseid bonds with the Spectre, and the Spectre takes them to the new Justice League HQ, where now everybody and their mother is in the Justice League. And everybody's trying to fight Darkseid. And Superman gets some magic powers. And when you read Alpha, there are a few parts where it's like, what's going on? Who is Darkseid talking to? It kind of seems like he's just talking to himself. But now you realize, oh, he's talking to the Spectre. And the Spectre tells him he has this essential role in the universe. And he starts out, and here's where we learn about this whole Superman energy idea. Superman energy is not like a thing. You know, you can't plug your phone charger into Superman and charge your phone up with Superman energy. And Superman is in no way powering the universe. But Superman embodies the hope and the energy that are at the core of reality in the DCU. But that energy doesn't really come from Superman. It really comes from the source, which exists on the edges of the DC universe. And Darkseid energy is the opposing force to that creative energy. And Darkseid learns about that. The Spectre tells him, and they had tried to tell him this in hell, and they tried to tell him in heaven that he has this very important role to play. He's an important part of keeping reality in balance. And the Spectre tells him he's the true source wall that separates the omniverse from the source, which is the primordial force of creation, right? And that's why he doesn't have a double. There's Supermans in every universe, but there's only one Darkseid because he's this primal, essential force. That's not what Superman's like. So that's why the whole Superman energy idea, it's more like just Superman is powered by hope, but not in any kind of a literal way. So Darkseid's power ebbs and flows. And he says, sometimes he's a god, sometimes he's a pawn, and he doesn't like that. Whether the multiverse exists and his power is scattered throughout universes, or whether they don't exist, and then he's got all the power inside him, which is what's going on right now. He doesn't like the fact that he's kind of part of this game that he has no control over. And then you add to that the fact that right now, all that power is inside him. So he's very restless, and he's the same Darkseid as ever who wants to control everything. So I saw where some people, like some article on Screen Rant, was talking about how Superman finally was able to solo kill Darkseid. And first of all, it wasn't really solo. A bunch of people were involved. And second of all, Darkseid wanted to die. Somebody in the issue said, I don't remember who, that if Darkseid had bonded with the Spectre, then now he's like the ruler of death itself, or he is death itself. So he allows himself to die, but he's ripped this tear in between universes, the DC universe and the Elseworld universe. And in the Elseworlds universe, that's where he begins again. As this primal force, if he dies, he'll just begin anew. He doesn't just end. But instead of beginning again in the DC universe, where he's bound by this balance between order and chaos, now he's in the absolute universe. He's separate from all that. So the DC universe is driven by life and hope, and now he comes to being in this absolute universe, which is driven by challenge and turmoil. Now, why does this matter? It's a big deal because now in the absolute universe, Darkseid can grow without limit. He says he's unleashed. He can be 1,000 feet tall. He can have a voice that will shake planets. And then once he reaches his maximum power, he's not just chilling out in the absolute universe. Then he's going back to the DC universe to take care of things there. So Darkseid will be more powerful than he's ever been before. And we can only assume that at some point, the DCU superheroes will have to join up with the absolute universe superheroes to get Darkseid back under control.